next speaker is a junior studying international studies and biology in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences. Following graduation, she plans to pursue a career in global health or foreign relations. Along with her studies, she's involved with the BC Bands program, GlobeMed, and On Tap Boston College. Please welcome our next speaker, Michaela Simoneau.
Okay, everyone can hear me? Good? Okay. Faith gives you hope, and hope gives you love. Dr. Meera Krishna, the director of Cord Siravani, said this to me and my fellow interns on the very last day of our internship, right when it was starting to hit me just how much I was going to miss all of the people I had met and this amazing place I had fallen in love with. This quote really encompasses everything I learned on my internship in India about the power of hope and determination and taking my passions and connections of love and turning those into action. Real personal connections create a web of people who together have an incredible power to cooperatively make change. And so with this in mind, I hope that Dr. Meera will allow me to make a slight addendum to her quote. Faith gives you hope, hope gives you love, and that love turns into action. My talk today, Hari Om, a model of accompaniment for international development, will aim to share my reflections on my summer internship with all of you and also to explore what lessons my experiences have for addressing some of the larger challenges we face in international development. So I guess the logical first question is how I ended up for 2.5 weeks in India in the summer after my sophomore year. And that story really begins during my college application process when I was trying to figure out what I was going to study, and in a conversation with my guidance counselor, I got directed to the field of public health. And when I got to BC, I didn't know that much about public health, but I was excited to learn more, so I decided to join GlobeMed at Boston College, and that decision really has changed my life. Here at BC, GlobeMed's weekly meetings are mostly made up of group discussions about current public health topics, which give us a vocabulary to talk about these issues we're so passionate about. But the larger part of what we do is fundraising for our partner organization. You see, GlobeMed is a national nonprofit network that pairs university chapters with community health groups all over the world, particularly in low and middle income countries. And the model is based on this idea of international development work based in grassroots efforts. And this fosters strong relationships and communication, so the work is tailored to what the local communities really need. GlobeMed at Boston College is partnered with Cord Siravani, which is a community health organization based in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, India, which is right down here. And the most tangible aspect of this partnership happens every summer when 3 to 4 interns go to work directly with our partner in India. So that's what I did this past summer. I hopped on a plane and I thought I had some idea of what I was going to be doing, but really looking back, I had no idea what I was set to encounter and experience. India is such a vibrant, spontaneous, bustling, spiritual place, and it's unlike anything else I have ever experienced. Most of my time was spent following around the Cord workers as they went through their day-to-day work. Here you can see me with my 2 fellow interns. And that's on our first day when we were in India. Cord Siravani stands for the Chinmaya Organization for Rehabilitation and Development, which is an acronym for basically saying that they do absolutely everything in the community there. And they are a community health organization under the larger umbrella of the Hindu Chinmaya mission, and they have such a large expanse of projects in all of the surrounding communities. One aspect of Cord's work is all the tangible projects they have running, which GlobeMed helps to fund. We spent a lot of time in particular on the waste segregation initiatives, which the GlobeMed interns from a few years ago actually helped to start. And we were dealing a lot with the problems with the expansion of the project and what the implications for that would be. So here you can see us working with the children in one of the villages, in Samadu. We went around and taught them how to do the waste segregation, and this project is important because it allows the waste to be recycled, and then from there it can be sold and make a profit, which comes back into the community. So it's a very sustainable project. And GlobeMed also helps to sponsor the building of toilets in the community. Here you can see one typical latrine, and then also one that had a rooftop view, which was pretty cool. And we also got to see the medical side of what Cord does. So they have a weekly clinic where people can come in and really address any different needs they have, but there's a specific focus on hepatitis B vaccination and rubella vaccination and the provision of pap smears for highly at-risk patients. But the other aspect of CORD's work, which I think is larger and more important, is what they do with education and empowerment initiatives. CORD holds Mahila Mandals, which are these women's group meetings where women have a safe place to gather and talk about all of the different issues in their community. And it's also a means for Dr. Mira, the director, to educate them about all sorts of health initiatives. So here you can see one woman who just received vitamins from her meeting. And then they also have a lot of different self-help groups where they stimulate interest in a lot of their training programs. So here, for instance, you have this woman took a class by this lady up here 3 years ago, and now she's a fully functioning tailor by herself. She has her own disposable income and is able to fully support herself and her family. They, additionally, in the self-help groups, they create a bunch of different products that CORD sells. This is one of the CORD workers named Vijaya with some of the different products they make. And CORD also does a lot of work with the Assam migrants who come down from the far north of India, and they definitely had the starkest poverty we saw in their communities because they have a lot of barriers to jobs and to access to education and things like that. So CORD works with all of these different communities. But the common theme for all these projects is that they're sustainable, working not just to change specific tangible aspects of the community, but they work for empowerment and education and changing the norms. It's all part of a wider movement for health equity. Now, equity is not the same thing as equality. It doesn't mean that all the different systems have to be exactly the same. But what it means is that health is a human right and that the resources and opportunities to retain and regain good health should be available everywhere. And these resources are not only medical, they're social, they're political, they're economic, and they're entangled in this much larger web of tradition and infrastructure, which is really difficult to decipher. But public health professionals have this job of trying to make sense of all of these complexities and then acting on them to get us closer to this ideal of equity. And this is the 21st century, excuse me, and we've made so much progress towards health and towards building a better life for everyone, but there are definitely some parts of the world that have been left behind. So equity is about the idea of reaching a hand across to those populations and bringing them along with us. To accompany someone is to go somewhere with him or her, to break bread together, to be present on a journey with a beginning and an end. This is a quote by Dr. Paul Farmer, who is the founder of Partners in Health. And his idea of accompaniment really resonated with me from the first time I heard it when I read his book, Mountains Beyond Mountains, because it seems to reintroduce this idea of intimacy and humanity, which I think is missing from a lot of development work. Accompaniment is a relationship joined in by two parties who work and walk along on a shared journey together. Both parties lean on each other as they travel onward, and it's an equal, respectful partnership with a firm grounding in trust and in dialogue. And it uses that as a launching point to collaborate, create ideas, and implement amazing change. Beyond that, it brings the dignity and the humanity back into public health work. With this mindset, it builds up a model that is not service for others, but service with others, which is a very important distinction. Father James Keenan has a really amazing quote that describes love and mercy as entering into the chaos of others, and that's what I truly believe motivates this kind of work. You enter into the full, unpredictable chaos of others. You invest a part of your heart and soul into it, and you leave a piece of yourself there, and you really do become that much more invested in being there and making a change. It breaks barriers and it cultivates understanding, and this is really the model that GlobeMed tries to achieve in all of its different internships. And it's one that I believe has more promise than any of the other ways in which we're currently working for international development, and I'm going to try and convince you why. So returning to my story of my time in India, I became convinced of the necessity of accompaniment when I saw how grassroots work was actually carried out in the CORD community. The community development workers who go out to the different villages really only have about 10 different criteria they fill out when they're doing data collection. But at times they would spend 45 minutes in a house just sitting and talking and hearing people's stories and really cultivating something that's so much more important than data, and that's trust. And it became clear just how much respect CORD has in the villages we visited, due in part to because of the work they do, but more because of how they did the work and how they cultivated this trust. And this is so important when you consider how much of public health work is based in behavior change, which we all know is very hard to do. And building up trust is just one way of facilitating education and that normative change in order to be really effective in the communities you're trying to help. Then you not only need this on-the-ground, intimate, informed knowledge about what norms already exist in the communities, but with this mutual understanding, you can actually make your points heard when you're trying to make a change. And so a few of the different experiences I had really drove home this point for me, and how a sustained dialogue is necessary to collaborate and to implement change. At one of the meetings we attended with women here, we talked a lot about alcoholism, because alcoholism and depression are incredibly prevalent in a lot of the village's cord works. One psychiatrist we were working with estimated that 80% of men in the villages have some sort of problem with alcohol, largely because it's so much a part of the social culture that men who don't participate are often ostracized. And there's so much social stigma around the issue that when there's a real concern, it doesn't get addressed. So this problem is allowed to continue. One alcoholic actually committed suicide on the second day we were there while we were visiting a village. So CORD has started some alcohol de-addiction programs, but while we were here, the women asked us what programs we had in the US to help solve these issues. And we really didn't have an answer for them. We didn't have this overwhelming answer. And we shouldn't be expected to. We shouldn't expect ourselves to. And it kind of drove home the point that we have to work together on these really global problems of public health. Another time was at the end of our internship when we were crafting our partnership action framework with Dr. Mira for the coming year. And we were talking about how we wanted to build these community compost pits. And all of these questions came up that I hadn't even considered, such as, well, we need to make sure there's a cover so the goats can't get into the pit. And then, oh, well, the cover can't be something that collects stagnant rainwater, but it can't be made of new materials because then someone will take it and use it for their own personal use. So this story drives home the point that if you haven't spent time intimately with a community and you don't know its dynamics, then you don't even know what questions you should be asking, never mind what answers there are. And so the reason I'm passionate about this is because of the amazing work that I saw while I was there, but it's also in part due to the work we saw when international aid and development initiatives went wrong. And well-intentioned initiatives can often end up doing more harm than good. Donors are imperative to a lot of nonprofit work, and so their support is obviously an essential part of CORD's efforts. And we had some really amazing times with donors, but then we also had some very uncomfortable experiences. We worked with some donors who made us feel like we were intruders when we were going into these communities, and they just lacked a respect and humility, which we had so come to expect from all of the community development workers. And the sick feeling in my gut really, to me, showed how the problems in the attitude of humanitarian aid really make a difference. And you need those elements of trust and respect in order to have a productive working relationship. And these initiatives also require due course. We were looking at one failed government scheme in the village of Putor, which these pictures are from. And open defecation is a huge problem in Tamil Nadu, not only because of the sanitation and health concerns, but because it causes a safety hazard, especially when women are going out into fields alone when it's dark. So as a response, the government has started all of these really wonderful programs where they're trying to build toilets for the community. But at one place we visited here in Putor, they built the toilet, but they failed to provide running water. So the initiative essentially turned into a glorified dumpster, and it was a complete waste of resources. And to me, that's more than sad and more than unfortunate. It's frustrating, and it's really maddening, and it says that we need to do something different about how we do international aid. So I want to share my story because I think it points to so many larger issues of coordination failure that play out throughout the entire international system. And all of these issues that public health tries to address are really incredibly multifaceted and deep-rooted, and the interventions they require to be solved need so many more resources and skills and knowledge than any one group can provide by itself. So it's unrealistic to bring in people who have no intimate knowledge of a place and expect them to be able to enact a solution. You can't just have a framework that's been used in your own context and force it onto a new population. My analogy that I use here is it would be like taking a puzzle that you have already been able to solve and taking a piece from that and using it to try to complete another one you're working on, and that just won't work. So still, creating coordination is not an easy fix, especially when you're dealing with global health. You have to work across so many different levels and so many different fields to bring the experts in, but then this is where the idea of partnership comes in, because then you can use all of the resources and delegate to all of these different experts, so you have everyone dealing with each individual facet of the public health issue you're trying to solve. And so my question is, at the basic level, who is more of an expert about these populations than the members of the populations themselves? So you have to build a network that facilitates cooperation and eliminates some of these barriers by fostering connections from grassroots change makers to private sectors and donors, and then from there on to higher levels of government and international institutions. And then you have the right people performing the right skills to make the right changes. Also, when you put in the effort to build these networks, then you can draw upon them in times of need, when there's an international crisis or whenever the need arises. And the United Nations actually has shown that they are invested in building partnerships. It's one of their sustainable development goals for the coming years. As long as I communicate, I'm okay. Swamini Vimalananda is her name. And the Swamini is the head of the ashram we stayed at. She's really an incredible woman. And we loved the opportunity we had to stay there because it was a very spiritual place. It's kind of the Hindu equivalent of a monastery. And there were devotees from all walks of life from all across the world who we got to meet while we were there. And we had a long interview with the Swamini while we were there and got to hear her backstory about how when she was young, she traveled across southern India by herself. Mind you, this was the 70s, backpacking through southern India where she had a language barrier. And yet she was still able to go into different villages and communicate with the people there and really make these real connections. And her story is a testament to not only the power of connection across boundaries, but also the incredible power and the essentiality of communication. So I think of it as communication, cooperation, and coordination. And it seems simple, but I think that these goals really underlie a whole realignment in how we have to think about service. Because through communication, you build understanding, and then you cooperate by taking that understanding and using it to work together on larger movements for change. And then you coordinate in how you actually implement that action and carry it out. So we have to alter our mindset. So this is the relationship that's the base of international aid, because then we reintroduce the idea of accompaniment and walk with each other towards more remarkable change. And cross-cultural communication can really just catalyze that entire journey. So I've already talked a little generally about Dr. Meera Krishna, but I just want to take a minute to emphasize how much of a superhero this woman is and how she's involved in really absolutely everything in the community. Her mind goes a million miles a minute, her impact is everywhere, and her heart really grows to love every person she meets. And she gives me so much hope because it proves that there are change makers everywhere, and we really just have to recognize them and help them and learn from them and open ourselves to them, and then we can become inspired by them. So the one big question I have left for the end of my talk is, why Hari Om? Why did I name my project Hari Om, and what does it have anything to do with my point? And really I want to emphasize the fact that it is the point. Hari Om is everywhere within the Chinmaya mission. It's a substitute for hello and a substitute for goodbye, and it's all over the walls of the court office, which is right over here, and it's all over the ashram. And as it was explained to us, Hari Om means I see the divinity in you. And as people say the words, they bring their hands together to symbolize this connection between two people meeting, which to me is a simple but powerful reminder of your shared humanity with everyone you meet. And it captures everything accompaniment and partnership really could be and should be. It's a coming together to achieve common goals while recognizing the dignity of everyone you encounter. It's a reminder to be humble and that the key attitude is working for others while working along with them side by side, no matter what different stories have brought you there. It's empathy in its highest form, and while I understand that you need practicality and you need pragmatism when you're trying to deal with these big issues, I think a little extra empathy could go a long way in considering how we deal with these larger issues of social justice. You may fail in your efforts. This is an important reminder from Dr. Meera because all of these big public health issues are not easy to fix. And the path that we take along towards fixing them is not an easy task. A lot of the times the journey really gets to you. Still, a focus on the kind of dialogue and diplomacy we're engaging with on a large scale and a small scale really advances our cause. When I think back to my time in India, I think about it in a lot of different layers. You zoom out and you see this breathtaking, amazing landscape. The mountains are absolutely incredible. And then you zoom in and you're haunted by these images of burning trash heaps on the side of the road or a little boy flying a newspaper kite in front of a metal shack. But then you zoom in further and you see the people and you see the goodness in the hearts of the people. And the Swamini had another wonderful quote where she said, when talking about India, that the outside is not good, but the core is good. And I really couldn't agree more with that, because people are welcoming, they're humble, they're so present, and they're so full of trust. And the heart is good, the heart is human, and the heart really deserves respect. And this leads me to the second half of the quote, because Dr. Mira would not leave us with such grim prospects for life. So it actually reads, "You may fail in your efforts, but do not fail to make an effort." Father James Keenan has another quote from Mass the other day, which really relates to this, in which he said, "Be there, do it, follow through." And I think that's the point. No matter how daunting these issues may seem, and no matter what doubts you may have, someone has to try to make a change. And from there, you inspire greater change. And that's how this conveyor belt just starts rolling. So accompaniment was only one of the many lessons I learned in India, and it might seem like a radical realignment of our thinking and a switch in our focus. Yet, is it really all that radical if it's just honoring human dignity and furthering our quest to love one another? So my final question for you is, if we're not here to love each other, then what's the whole point? Thank you.